Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Bisola, and every Saturday we look at some stories shaping our continent. First, Nigeria's oil production has declined by 30,000 barrels per day. What factors are driving this reduction, and how might it affect the country's economy and its standing in the global oil market? Next, Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the Indigenous People of Biafra, is seeking an out-of-court resettlement in his ongoing legal battle. We examine the potential benefits and drawbacks of this move, the motivations behind it, and how it could influence political and social tensions in Nigeria. Finally, Kenya is facing significant controversy over its finance bill. How will the bill's rejection impact Kenya's economy, public services, and citizens? We explore the main arguments for and against the bill and how it fits into Kenya's broader political and economic sectors. Joining me for insight on these critical stories is Stanley Kechukwu, Head of Operations at SBM Intelligence. Welcome, Stanley.
Thank you. Thank you, Gift. Thank you, Peace, rather, for having me. Sorry.
Yeah, you're welcome. Before we dive into other stories, I want us to treat the oil production story first. So what came out this week was that Nigeria's average crude oil production fell to 1.25 million barrels per day in May from 1.28 million barrels per day recorded in April. So this is a decline of 30,000 barrels per day. So what exactly is going on and what are the factors causing this decline?
Well, what is going on is that Nigeria is actually retrogressing. That's what's going on because the oil itself is one of Nigeria's major source of revenue. It's actually the highest, maybe after foreign remittances. But government's personal revenue actually comes more from the oil. What is going on there has been going on for a very long time. I remember that Nigeria was doing around 2.4, 2.5 million barrels back then when President Obasanjo was around. And since then, we've seen a constant drop in oil production. And some of the reasons they're not far-fetched. Insecurity is a very, very big issue in Nigeria Delta. We saw, I think towards Obasanjo period, we saw a lot of oil bunkering, oil theft. We witnessed the coming in of men, the movement for the emancipation of Niger Delta. They've also been saying that you're taking oil from our side and our side is not being developed. What's happening? It doesn't make any sense. So there's been various of attacks on oil facilities for the past 24 years. And this thing has continued to disrupt oil production. Under Jonathan, we saw the same thing. Before Jonathan, we saw under Yaradua, he actually granted amnesty to, the Niger Delta militants as a way of put down your weapons and let's negotiate so that we see how all of us can benefit from this largest. Then Jonathan, we saw the same thing. Then under Buhari, even got worse under Buhari. Now under Tinubu, we're also seeing the same thing.
Okay.
There's been a lot of problem around it. These are
Yeah.
the manpower problem. Hello?
Yeah, I
These are
can
some
hear
of
you
the
now.
when I say manpower, where you have to use force, to
Yeah.
make demands. Then there's also the government failure also where when the Emir of Kano, Sanusi, was CBN governor, he made mention that some monies were not being remitted from the NNPC. On the government side, there's been alleged to be a lot of fraud happening in the oil sector. They've not been able to put this money back to investing in the capitals of the oil industry. The refineries I cannot even remember when those refinery worked. The Warri refinery, the Kaduna refinery, and the third one I can't even remember when they worked. So this problem about as in our oil production going down didn't start today. The effect is that the government is not going to be able to build more infrastructure because that source of revenue is the biggest. And if revenue is not coming in, where do you run to? You run to collect loans from foreign corporations, which you still have to pay with higher interest. Currently, Nigeria is servicing its loan with almost almost 95% of its revenue. And that is why there's no money for other investments. That's why the government is borrowing money to service money that they've been borrowed. So I think President Tinubu should actually take, put an eagle eye on this thing. The same people who's been running the NNPC for the past 8 years are still the same people there. I don't understand. Somebody who was there for that long and couldn't, create any value, you still have the same person manning the NNPC. I think that's the first place President Tinubu has to start with. Flush out all these guys who's been running the NNPC down. Put in fresh hand and let's see if if you put in fresh hands with people who understand what they're doing, I'm sure we're going to see a change in that industry. Somehow you can actually discuss with Niger Delta militants, and see how we can also ramp up for food production. Another problem we notice is that since the international oil companies are beginning to leave the onshore and Nigerian indigenous companies have taken over those oil fields, they've not been able to do the magic like when the international oil companies are doing it. So the government actually needs to look into it very well so that we can see the kind of changes, positive changes that Nigerians are expecting.
Yeah, you've touched on a lot of juicy points, but I just want to ask because I know that one of the major issues affecting the oil industry is oil theft and bunkering. And I remember watching a DW documentary, and one of the security personnel was saying that the more they destroy these illegal refineries, the more they are rebuilt and repaired. Who exactly is backing these people? Is it possible that there are some state actors backing these illegal refiners? Because how come there's not been any progress through all the times they've tried to crack down on these people?
I really do not have for sure to say the internal backings from the NNPC or from the Nigerian government, but the truth is that there's been people who are powerful who are actually engaging in this oil theft. And I know for a sure that the government knows them because you have the Navy there. What's the Navy's job? To secure your maritime ways. There was a time that a vessel came into Nigeria, a vessel, not a boat, not a vessel, that carries almost 1 million barrel of oil. You know how big that thing is. And
Mm,
to even load such vessel will not is not one day.
mm.
It's not even two, it's not one week. Sometimes it could load for like 2 weeks on Nigerian waters, and the Nigerian Navy said they didn't detect it, and that vessel was able to move, crude out of Nigeria. I think it was apprehended in Togo or so, and recently the same vessel came back. You know, the name has been changed and all that. It came back, and the same thing happened. What happened was that I'm not sure. I think the Niger Delta security people in charge of pipeline there burnt it. For me, that's also covering.
Evidence.
That's also yeah, covering evidence. I think the government should have just done a proper investigation to know who owns it, who the people behind it. The bombing or the burning of that vessel is actually very fishy.
Very suspicious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have two more questions on this particular topic. I was just wondering, because I know that at different times the government has tried to strike a deal with militants. For example, I think Tompolo, the government has tried to just in a way to reduce the problems in Niger Delta and the oil problems. But how effective has this strategy been? Because I know you kind of suggested that too as a remedy, as a solution to this problem. But how effective has that strategy been over the years?
If you ask me, I don't think that solution has been very, very effective because at the end, we see new militants coming up every day to say,
Mm,
"Oh, this is my own area, and I have to secure this part, so the government has to settle me." Sometimes it's like it's like when you set up one, another one is coming out. When you set up one, another one is coming out, and it is not sustainable. It hasn't been sustainable. What the government actually needs to look into is to see how they can develop the Niger Delta. Niger Delta has brought in so much money for this country that other states have actually benefited from. So the government needs to look at, building more roads, expanding Niger Delta, connecting Niger Delta, so that the people on their own can start working on their human capacity to see how they can also contribute and add value to the economy of the country.
Yeah, because if Niger Delta, if it's developed and people know that okay, the government is doing a lot for them, just like they are giving so much, to the rest of the country, then maybe they won't really focus so much on vandalizing or carrying out illegal refining on those oil spots. Yeah, so
Exactly.
the last question
Exactly.
I have on this topic, and I think it's so crucial that I think we need to touch on it, is recently the vice president of oil and gas at Dangote Industries came out and claimed that international oil companies are inflating local crude oil prices and forcing the refinery to import crude from distant countries like the United States. What are your comments on that? Why is there a spat between a Dangote refinery and the IOCs? And how exactly can
Mm,
result? Yeah.
I think this is business. It happens in almost every kind of business, most especially when there's an indigenous company ready to play in that same industry. We saw it happen with Epis when Epis was also trying to get its flying routes from Lagos to London. We noticed that the international airline companies actually jacked up the price because Nigeria was actually owing them some money, but it's not enough reason to just increase the price. The cost to move from Lagos to London. I'm sorry that I'm comparing it with the Epic situation. I just want you to understand,
Okay. Yeah.
my point. Increase the price from Lagos to London, which is a very hot spot. The prices went up, but in Ghana, it is cheaper to go from Ghana to London than from Lagos to London. And we saw an indigenous player coming to it, say, okay, because of that, he was able to drive down the price because he felt that Nigerians were being exploited. And the the airline, the international airline companies sort of, not that they came together, but they came back and opened that route and are trying to crash down the price beyond the operating cost for the local for airfields. It's just the normal thing you see in business when you have big monopoly. The same thing that we're saying in the oil sector. Dangote has opened his refinery. What what should happen? I mean, I don't even know how it works here in Nigeria when you compare to other places where they have crude oil. How would you own a refinery in your own country that you are a crude producer and you have to import crude from America, so that you can refine and sell petrol to your own people? It just does not make any sense. I think the government should find a way, to align these people, because at the end, who would suffer this whole thing? Who will suffer this whole thing is the Nigerian people. When this fight happens, the price will go up. Nigerians will pay for it. The president should see a way to work things out with Dangote, how you can actually get crude supply from Nigeria to its refinery, so you can refine and, you know, hopefully we'll see the drop in price of petrol here in Nigeria. But aside that, I don't think in the foreseeable future that fuel price will actually come down.
Okay, okay, thank you for that. I want us to go to the next story, which is on Nnamdi Kanu. So recently, he requested an out-of-court settlement, which was rejected by the federal government. I know he was arrested around 2021. He was rearrested around 2021. Some people have deemed the arrest constitutional, some others unconstitutional. But why exactly did the federal government reject his request for an out-of-court settlement?
Well, to be honest with you, there's a lot of reasons why that could have happened. I'm actually not the federal government's counsel rather, but Nnamdi Kanu's lawyer saw the way the case was going. They've asked, he got a bail, but he was not allowed to leave. He's still under the SSS custody. And he has asked the court to actually drop some charges against him. One of it, which is the charge for treason, and that is also not happening. So his lawyer has said he would settle out of court. They reached out to the lawyer to the federal government, and he said he's not in the best position to negotiate that with Nnamdi Kanu. His job is just to prosecute. that if Nnamdi Kanu's lawyer is seeking out of court settlement, then the right person to speak to is the Minister for Justice and the Attorney General for the country. He's the one who is in the best position to negotiate that for the government. You know, so, but my point about this thing is that he has been held down for so long. Whatever. I mean, those charges can be valid. If he actually committed those crimes. But what we're saying is that since the arrest of Nnamdi, Southeast has become almost like a no-go area. Businesses have crashed. Every Monday they sit at home. Southeast is losing almost 5 billion every Monday. And it's not helping the economy to grow. Insecurity is at its highest in Southeast. I remember before 2020, by around 2016, 2017, Southeast was the most safest place. So Anambra actually was like the most safest place to live in Nigeria. But after the arrest of Nnamdi Kanu, we saw the Monday sit-at-home declaration in a bid to support the trial of Nnamdi Kanu. But that has not led us anywhere. It's been killings, it's been mining, it's been, destruction of properties and businesses. People cannot even go to work anymore. Cost of living is going up, and businesses are not doing well because there's always sit at home on a Monday. Monday is like the most important business day for anybody, even in a workplace, because Monday is like the day you come to draw a new plan. It's like starting the year afresh, starting the week afresh. So I think that the government should actually look into this thing if they are looking at cementing legitimacy. The present administration still suffer legitimate issue. I think if an Nnamdi is released, it might actually draw the Southeast closer to him to support his government. But we can only say it's up to the government to do the right thing, to see that peace is being fostered in Nigeria and everybody can go about their daily activities without fear or
Yeah.
harassment from anybody.
But I want to ask a question on what you just said because um do you really think that if Nnamdi Kanu is released right now, there will actually be a drop in insecurity? Because we understand that
Yes.
there's a fallout between Simon Ekpa and Nnamdi Kanu, and it's been said, we don't know if it's true, but it seems like that faction that is very militant, causing all this chaos, seems to be more associated with the other leader than Nnamdi Kanu. So how are we so sure that if he's released, it's going to douse the conflict or the violence in that area? Also, I also wanted to comment on what's the general view of people in the Southeast towards IPOB? As the view would be favorable, are they okay with it? Are they also in that fight for justice, or are they just tired of being shut out of their shops, out of their businesses?
Okay, I'll start with the first question. That's if Nnamdi is released, if it will douse the tension in Southeast. Don't forget that Nnamdi Kanu is actually the person who started this recent movement, the Indigenous People of Biafra. It was this incarceration that actually created a vacuum that Simon Ekpa has filled into, and has taken the conversation to um, a whole new level that is not good at all. It's been about killing, it's been about break laws and order down so that people find it very difficult. Nnamdi Kanu still remains the leader of IPOB. If he's released, even though there's a fraction at the moment, if he's released, at least his own faction would try to see how they can stabilize peace, at least within a very large coverage where he resides. Then I know with dialogue, with the Ohanese of Igbo land, of Ndi Igbo rather, the Southeast governors, if they come together, they could actually work out a plan to see how they can fight the other criminals who are actually terrorizing the Southeast. Now the Kanu's release without tension in the Southeast, that is for sure. But what I cannot say is for sure is for how long, because Simon Ekpa on the other side has bestowed on him the Prime Minister of Biafra land. Of course, there will be a tussle between both of them And I don't know who's going to step down for who at this point in time. But releasing Nnamdi Kanu will actually douse a lot of tension in the Southeast. Then the second question is, what's the view about Igbo people on IPOB? Me personally, I'm a native of, I'm from the Southeast. I really do not, and this is my view, I do not support going about, you know, the trying to create your own space or your own state or your own country with violence. I think we should continue to negotiate and see if that works. If that does not work, then that's fine. So I'm not saying that Nigeria should break up. I'm only saying that violence is not the way. You can dialogue it out. And I know a lot of Igbos are not really interested in that conversation too. To say, oh, you want to break up Nigeria and all that. Igbos have invested so much outside of Southeast, and I don't think they will want to see some of their investment go. What happened, after the Civil War.
All right. So looking at the future, let's say 5 years, 5 years, 10 years, what do you think this conflict will metamorphosize into? Do you think that the government and Nnamdi Kanu and IPOB be able to reach like a conclusion, a kind of settlement, or do you think this will just drag on and on and on?
But I think recently about 60 House of Rep members wrote a letter to President Tinubu asking him to use his power as president to actually have Nnamdi Kanu released for one same reason, so that we can see how we can foster peace, unity, and harmony in the country, and see how everybody can come together to work, with the government. That is according to their letter. But we've not heard anything yet from the president in that regard. But I'm hoping that you know a kind of arrangement is reached where Nnamdi is released, and we'll see the changes that happen in the southeast, and we hope that peace will be restored in the southeast. In 5 years' time, if the case remains like this, then I think southeast will be a no-go area.
All right, thank you, Stanley. So moving on to the last story, which is in Africa, Kenya's finance bill. So recently there was a very severe protest or demonstration in Kenya, in Nairobi. And I remember seeing on social media, on X, there was so much activism and all of that. And I saw people from Nigeria standing in solidarity with people from Kenya. So apparently the government increased taxes on commodities, fuel prices, bread, sanitary pads, export duties. Why exactly did President William Ruto consider increasing taxes, especially in such a economically volatile situation in country?
Well, I'm not in the government, so I really do not know why. But I like to think that one of the reasons is that the, the president has a plan, has a vision, and that kind of vision actually requires plenty of money to get it done. But I'm not saying that increasing taxes is the best way. What Africa has actually lacked for a very long period of time and is still lacking is it's actually leadership. Africa has suffered bad leadership for the longest of time. That is why we're not seeing, people who are visionary, people who are thinking. For President Ruto, if subsequent governments have actually done the right thing, I don't think he would come now to start increasing, cost of or increasing VAT and excise duties and the likes of that. It's because his predecessor didn't do the right thing. There's a consistent failure in government, not just in Kenya, but everywhere. What Kenya is currently going through is the same thing that Nigeria is actually going through. We've suffered bad leadership for the longest of time. That is why today, President Tinubu came out and said, "Oh, subsidy is gone," and boom, just shoot up the cost of living because fuel is actually a very big component to our everyday activities since we cannot even boast of power supply. So the reason why Nigeria is actually standing strong in support of Kenyans rather, is because they understand the situation. It's the same thing that were actually going through. I mean, the whole thing is just unrealistic. There's no how if that bill, I mean, if that bill goes through, but I heard that it's not going to happen again. But if such a bill goes through, where would the average Kenyan man be in the next 2, 3 years? He'll be sent back to the village, sent back into poverty. Because how would you increase VAT on bread that does not even have a VAT before from 0% to 16%? How do you expect that people should survive? The same thing, there's also an excise duty on every kobo you spend. I mean, it increased by 5% from 15 to 20%. For every transaction you do, for everything you buy, there's a 5% excise duty on it. And the government is trying to get to the point where it becomes a cashless economy. This incentive for that is that people will no longer take cash. People will no longer use, a trackable source of payment, which is mobile app payment and the like. People will resort back to cash, and it's what the government has been trying to avoid for a very long time. So it's going to affect their everyday life, which is not what anybody wants at this point in time.
All right. But why was there so much pushback? So I know we can say, oh, it's because there's already like high cost of living and people usually don't like most taxes, but the pushback was so strong, that there was actually like a very long protest and all of that. Why was there so much pushback from citizens this time around?
Yeah, because if you look at the finance bill, the that bill is like in Nigeria here, we call something crazy bill. You pay for services that was not rendered to you in power. That bill is in that direction. It does not make any sense. Let's take, for example, if you want to own a car. Now, if you are importing the car, there are five taxes on importation of cars, five, which when that happens, it has actually doubled the cost of buying that car. Number one tax on it is import duty. There's excise duty, which is currently at 25%. There's VAT, which is currently standing at 15%. There's something called railway development levy. Then the fifth one is actually import declaration fee. Just because you want to own a car, you want to import a car into Kenya. And after importing that car, to even enjoy your car, to drive on the road, there are additional 12 taxes that you have to pay. And one of it, which is the most crazy for me, is the 2.5% 2.5% tax on you know on the value of your car annually. You have to pay 2.5% tax on the value that you own a car. Every year, the value of that car, you pay 2.5% for owning a car. And there's no how you want to avoid that tax because it's tied around your papers, your renewal of the license of your car. Before you can drive a car, your car needs to be documented. So as you renew your car papers, you also would pay 2.5% of the value of that car to be able to use it. Now let's even look at the 12 additional taxes to drive your car. You're going to pay excise duty on fuel. You're going to pay road maintenance fee. You're going to pay petroleum development levy. You're going to pay railway development levy. You pay anti-adulteration levy. There's a shipping levy. There's an importation levy. There's an importation declaration fee for fuel. There's VAT on fuel, increased from 8% to 16% in the last 2 years. There's VAT on buying spare parts for your vehicle. And there's also insurance renewal that comes at a premium levy, which is at 0.25%. You also pay VAT of 16% when you go and fix your car at the mechanic. That alone is enough for everybody to push back. That bill, that bill is not it's not a bill that Kenyans should even say and see it go through first reading. I really I'm in support of the Kenyan people because we notice that African leaders are always copying themselves. If that bill goes through in Kenya, I think a lot of African leaders so will begin to propose such bills. So I mean, kudos to the Kenyan people.
Yeah, so and I noticed that the after President Ruto came out and said, okay, he considered to what the people wanted and said, okay, the taxes will go. The chants and the activism moved from wanting the taxes to go to wanting Ruto himself to go. Why is that? Is it just the taxes, or there's been other factors that have been piling up to cause this?
Mm, of course, there's been other factors that have been piling up. It's not as if Kenya is getting better as the day goes by. It's the same retrogression from government to government. You know, the current president was also in government when the former President Kenyatta was also president. So he's been part of this government for a very long time. Sitting down to propose such a crazy bill is enough reason for the Kenyan people to tell him to go. It's enough reason. Look at it now. Cost of living is going up everywhere, and you're proposing this kind of bill again. How do you expect people to survive? How do you expect people to cope? For every transaction you do, there's a 5% charge on it. There's a 16% increase on bread. How do you expect people to survive? In that case, I don't even if you're asking me, I don't even want such a person to continue as a leader. For you to even sit down and think of such bill, that means you don't even wish us well. So I understand why the Kenyans are actually saying that the president must go because this bill is not from this world.
Yeah, so the last question that we have for today, I know you mentioned it earlier that African leaders, one issue we have in Africa is we lack leadership. Why do African leaders always resort to taxing their citizens or taxing their countries to prosperity? Or why do they think that that is the only way or the best way to achieve their fiscal or economic goals? And how exactly do you think this can be rectified? Because we have so many resources that can be utilized and used just to better the situation of the continent. So what exactly do you think, and how do you think that these resources can be harnessed to actually improve the lives of the people?
Number one problem that most African countries and leaders have is that African leaders and African countries are very corrupt. They don't even look inward to say, let's develop our people. If you look at Nigeria, for instance, you see how rich and wealthy these politicians are. They've never done business. They've never owned, many of them have never owned a business of their own. They don't even know how to run the business. They find themselves in government where they literally have to do nothing but make so much money, steal so much money, and do nothing. They travel abroad. I'm actually getting somewhere. They travel abroad and they see how things work there. But they come back home and do nothing about the growth of their own people. And they are happy. I mean, it's a shame that I am a Nigerian and I'm wealthy and I step out of my country, maybe to the Western world, and I see how things are working. And I hear people calling my people poor. I hear people calling my people poor, and I'm okay with it as a government person with all the whole resources at our disposal. There's been a whole lot of issues going on. The way not Nigerians, rather, the way Africans actually elect their leader is also a problem. The kind of leaders that have hijacked and government in the last 60, no, in the last say 50, 40 years are not people who are visionary. All they want to do is launder and plunder the country's wealth at the expense of the poor masses and only cater for their own family. And you see, when most of their families are having issues, you see the speed at which they make things available for them. These are the kind of speed they should also be using make life easy, for the ordinary man that they are supposed to render service to because they are president or they are leaders, they call them leaders, but they forget that they are actually civil servants. Their job is to serve, and not to launder and kill the country. It's actually very unfortunate that Africa has been going through this for a very long time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Stanley, for participating in today's episode. And to all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. For deeper insights into our work, please visit our website at sbmintel.com. And remember to connect with us on social media. So you can find us on X, on Facebook, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. So that's all we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Stanley, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.